2, 1.
Hello and welcome to, this is the second of our Ask the Expert sessions for the disaster preparedness course for nonprofits and libraries. My name is Daphne Lagios. I will be your host today. And we are so thrilled today to have Carolyn Appleton with us. She is one of our amazing, wonderful subject matter experts who we've had it's been such a joy working with her. And just a little bit, I'll let her introduce herself, but a little bit about her. So she has a background in nonprofits, and then that kind of worked into like a background in technology and preparing for a disaster. She's very, very knowledgeable in terms of social media and communication. And that was when we were looking for subject matter experts, when we wanted to pull someone in to meet that need. And that's why we chose her. We've been thrilled to have her with us. What we're going to do today is similar to what we did with Joe Hillis last week, and we'll be doing next week with Drew. We'll be doing, I'm going to do a quick introduction. Carolyn is going to talk about what she sees as the top things to really think about when you're getting prepared for a disaster. Then we have some time for a question and answer session. And then afterwards, we'll sign off and we'll let you guys go on your day. But we're so happy to have you joining us. Give me a moment here. I'm just going to share my screen. And one moment here. Okay. And Carolyn, can everybody see the screen?
It's a little tiny for me, but that's okay. I pulled up my own.
Okay. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Oh, is that better?
It'll work.
Okay. All right. So Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome. If you could introduce yourself and, I gave a brief overview. If you could talk a little bit more about the numerous organizations you worked with and what your focus is, and then we'll just leave right in.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining us on this video conference. And I have an unusual background. I mean, basically, I have a major gift fundraising background, and I have since adopted social media, new technologies in my work. And a lot of the reason why I did that is that I worked in remote locations and tackled some really tough projects where really there wasn't a whole lot of infrastructure. But there was very good promise for potential major gift donations. And so I developed more of a technological edge to my work to help me accomplish a lot with little. And that led me ultimately to about 10 years ago becoming a volunteer for N10, the Nonprofit Technology Network. And today, for the past, 3-4 years, I've been coordinating the N10 and NetSquare Nonprofit Tech Club Austin. And we meet principally at a startup hub, technology hub called Capital Factory, although we are going to be Oracle this week. I think some of you online will see my comments about Oracle and Intuit, QuickBooks, etc. But so I became more tech savvy. Here's one thing that a lot of people do not understand in nonprofits. And early on, I adopted technology because my donors were among the early adopters. You think oftentimes, for instance, like I did a lot of work with members of the King Ranch family and ranchers in South Texas. And you think, oh, cows, what does that have to do with technology? Forget it. Well, I'll tell you what. Most of those philanthropists, which there are many, use new technologies to monitor their ranch operations and all kinds of their operations from birding tours, if they have birders out there, historic tourism visitors, dove hunters, whatever that is, they are monitoring it with technologies. And they were among the earliest to do that. And so it made sense for me to get tech savvy, as it were, to be able to match that interest of theirs and their way of communicating. So I was able to work in environments where I eventually work in environments where I did not have really any staff support, or very, very little. I literally had to do everything myself. And major gift donors are demanding donors. I think they're the best donors, but a lot of people are just totally overwhelmed by them. So I've enjoyed that. I use technologies to be able to meet the needs and to get those gifts in. And in fact, I only got on social media in 2009 on Facebook to actually to work with a donor who invited me on there, who wanted to just see what I was up to. And here is what they say, and this is true in disasters more and more today. I keep up with everyone on Facebook, she said. I have many cousins and friends and extended family members, something like over 150 of them. And Facebook is a really great way for me to keep track of everyone in one place. And also, their visual capabilities for that as well. So photos and videos and just communicating, like, this is what I'm up to, what's going on. So I was very nicely allowed to get into that mix and to share information about my nonprofit project. So obviously social media has advanced a lot, and now we're using it a lot in emergency situations. In regard to this course, I would say my father is a retired emergency management professional, actually an earthquake emergency manager in Southern California. And he had responsibility for a 26,000 person corporate campus and preparing them should a disaster strike, an earthquake strike. And so he shared a lot of that information with me. So I got a little leg up on the emergency side of the information there. But also through 9/11 to, actually an emergency in my case being once I've had my documents, my e-documents, which was in my case everything stolen, I went to the cloud. I was in the cloud early on, and immediately as I began using it over the years, I saw how great the capabilities were for that, for security, and just operating more efficiently overall. It's not just emergencies where that's helpful. So I recently had the honor of working with a Port Aransas nonprofit that did experience Hurricane Harvey, and also had friends in the area, at other nonprofits in Corpus Christi and out in Sinton who experienced the negative impacts of Hurricane Harvey. And so I've heard a lot of the stories. And with the Port Aransas Art Center, this is like already a pretty advanced thinking group, and definitely knew they were in a hurricane zone. And so you've probably seen in the curriculum some of the stories about that and how they actually were building a new building. They actually opened the building, and within a month, a hurricane hit. So they did relatively well because they had built above code, as they say, and they had gone above and beyond what they needed to do. And I actually mentioned that I thought to them that they should do their own webinar on that. If you're going to do a facility, go above code. It totally paid off. Everything outside of their building, though, their beautiful new building, was destroyed or mucked up, or it was a real mess. And they did have a lot of storage off-site. So we did, while I was working with them just over a year, have to recreate some donor documents, for instance. Like we just, needed to be thanking people. Obviously, I'm a development-focused person, so we had to recreate the list of the people, and it was well over 100 people. So it was a real big challenge. So development-wise, here's the other thing. When I do my research, this is what was so hard when I lost my documents that were taken. I think they were stolen, but I can't say that 100%. So anyway, they disappeared. And I do a lot of high-powered research. So I mentioned this in one of the case studies with the Boy Scouts of America. You know, I had probably $5 million in prospects that I had researched. Now, if once the documents disappeared, hey, where'd it go? Luckily, I had carbonite at that time, and I was able to restore all my research back to the chairman of the board at that council, which covers, you know, Laredo up to Victoria. You know, it's a huge stretch of land of you know, of counties across South Texas. So they were able to pick up and move forward. I mean, I had done my work for a year and I was off on another project, but I was able to do it because carbonite had all that research in the cloud. And I just thank my lucky stars. You know, the poor chairman of the board came to me and said, do you have any information? We can't find that stuff, all your work. I mean, and I'm like writing, documenting links and all this supportive information. It was unbelievable. So I said, wait 1 minute. He actually came. I lived in a condo in Corpus Christi, in a big condo building on Ocean Drive. And so I said, wait 1 minute. So I went upstairs to my home office, and on a flash drive, I said, here you go. I mean, an entire year's worth of work. So I just can't say enough good things about the cloud. You know, I was 2003 is when I got into the cloud because of my own emergency situation, losing documents. But I just can't, that's it. I work in the cloud now. And really in Austin, I would say a lot of the nonprofits that I have worked with here and increasingly elsewhere are putting everything in the cloud, and like we're having remote access, you know, to it. And like I can get a grant from, say, their Dropbox account. I can pull that down, I can work on it, and I go, here are my edits, comments, or I added this, what do you think? Put it back up for comment. They can work on it, send it back to me, and I can be at my home office and do that. But in an emergency, that's the kind of ability that you want to have. But the other thing I found in South Texas too, it's having lived there 10 years in Corpus Christi, although I've worked and, you know, out toward Kingsville and all over Corpus and then up to Sinton, et cetera. People, oh, we don't have time for this. You know, I mean, our mission is so important, and which it is, I agree, but our mission is so important. And I just don't have time to do that. I mean, I'm just so stressed out because I have so much to do otherwise. But the point is, you just have to stop and prepare and get everybody kind of focused to be able to respond, create a plan, review that plan. It's when I say there's no time like the present, just you have to set aside time. Maybe it's an annual staff retreat and you make that part of what you're going to do. But you need to set aside the time and then document that down, put that in the cloud or hard drive or somewhere, save a copy, you know, as our curriculum has mentioned. But if you will do it once, though, here's my thought, do it once, you can edit it and update it. And here's the other thing, you don't think things are going to change, but man, after a year, you can go back that plan and go, man, no, we wouldn't do that way again because we now have this working, or we went to that cloud service, or whatever it is. So I would say go ahead and do it, and then you have to keep it alive and updated and just store it. And then, you know, new employees come on and then they leave, and new volunteers, like in Port Aransas Art Center is a wonderful group of volunteers that are really, they work just like staff. It's really a laudable outfit in that way, but you got to protect them. If they're doing that work just like their staff, then they need to be protected too. And it may be the public. If there's some emergency happens and you've got visitors inside your building from the public, you need to be able to protect them. What are we going to do? We need to do A, B, C. Here's our plan. And so I guess I would say if the Department of Defense decided that it would put its operations up in the cloud. Nonprofits can put them up in the cloud. I get a lot of kickback. Oh, well, I think the thing is, it's like it's physical. Like I physically have it. I physically have this server here. I physically have this computer, and it's real when I'm sitting there personally in looking at it. And so it sometimes with groups that aren't used to the cloud per se, that it takes a little adjusting. What is it? Is it okay? Will my documents be okay up there? And I just like to say that if the Department of Defense can go into the cloud, the nonprofit sector can go into the cloud too. And you'll really be glad you did. I think it just takes, again, take a little time to learn what's going on, get that up, maybe get a duplicate, you want to put it on a flash drive or some other protected source and put that in a file. Okay, whatever. But basically, you can keep working before, during, and after a disaster if you know all this is working. You could actually just have everybody leave, lock it down to the best of your ability, and be working from home. And a lot of places in Austin these days do expect you to use your own laptop. And luckily I have several laptops now that I use for that on the road per se. And so if you can tie into a central source, in my case right now I'm using Dropbox because I kind of got used to remote sharing and collaboration within Dropbox. So I'm real used to that. But really, Box, any of these services, they're so good today. So I would definitely say get into the cloud. And then don't forget, our host is TechSoup. They're the ones who did all this work. I've chimed in with my stories and my experiences and my advice. But basically, you can not be worried about getting equipment and software replacements if you need that, or new Box cloud service or whatever it is. Check with them. If you have a question, ask them. There's no charge to register, kind of as a member or whatever you call it, but get on there and put your nonprofit on there, and then just get the emails, and maybe you'll say, oh, we need some laptops for an educational program, and look, Dell's got some, or there's some refurbished ones sometimes on there. Always check for that, because it's highly likely you won't have to pay full price, and that certainly is a good thing. And now this last point I have on my slide, I have to say, it's, you get so focused on what you're doing, and you are, sometimes you lose sight of the big picture. I mean, everybody from the, support staff on up to the executives, if it's a larger nonprofit, you're providing a service in the community, and people do in the public come to count on you to provide that service, and they care. When it's a nonprofit, they care more. And it's important to plan, to stop, to take that extra effort, to get ready in case there's an accident. And we all hope it won't happen, but it does occasionally happen. And what if you have to lock down for an active shooter like we've seen? I mean, there are crazy people out there, and you want to protect your nonprofit. You want to continue operating, but don't forget, it's not just me, my job, like looking inside all the time. It's, you have to have the big picture. Like, I'm part of a big organization, and their work's really important, and we need to get back going and communicate, and just, you need to kind of get out of your, I guess, just super internally focused mode. And it's a responsibility to the community. And I think nonprofits, people get hired, it's come, they go, whatever it is. But you have to know that you're there and you have a mission. Everybody is part of getting that mission done. And I mean, every lowly person up to the CEO, you have to occasionally step back from just being so involved every day in everything you're doing and go, hey, sure. I also want to mention, when I mentioned the active shooter situations that Texas has been experiencing, I hate it so much. But the Homeland Security has a YouTube channel, and they actually have like about an hour-long video on the active shooter situations. You know, it's a few years old, but man, is it good. My parents actually are retired and live in Arizona, and it refers to the shooting that Gabby Giffords was involved in Tucson, I guess it was. And it interviews the people who survived and what they went through and how close they were to the shooter and what happened and how they kind of watched each other and supported each other and how they support each other today in the trauma of recovery. And so I just wanted to mention it's not a hurricane, but it is a really that is a great video. So tune in YouTube channel for U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and there's some good ones. Another really good source for video, just general information, is the CDC has a YouTube channel, and Centers for Disease Control. Man, I think that's good too. So just YouTube's getting better and better with all this really helpful information. So I just recommend that. But so I am totally in the cloud. I don't have anymore a old-fashioned modem. I'm in the cloud. I'm so happy in the cloud. So if you ever have questions, man, ask them. But that's really all I have to say about it. Some of my experiences there, I have obviously shared, and I just have to say, sometimes you have to stop, think of others, and plan thoughtfully and hope that nothing happens. But in this day and age, it's a bit of a crazy time. So better prepared than not. So there you go. Those are my top 5 disaster preparation and recovery points. I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I have to ask you, how difficult was it to pick the top 5?
Not hard at all.
Okay.
They just kind of went, that's it. That's it. Go, go, go.
Sometimes I feel like when we ask our experts of like different, that question, they'll say, oh, but there's too many, I can't. But I just was really struck because you are just so kind of clear. And what I especially like about, but what you suggested is this constant kind of reminder that the nonprofits are doing important work. Mm-hmm. And that it's our responsibility to take care of ourselves so then we can take care of the community.
Yes. And really, you assume that everybody knows that, but people are going to a job, they're doing a job, but they're not necessarily always thinking, hey, my mission's bigger. I'm part of this great organization. We have a bigger mission. And so sometimes you have to get out of that focus thinking into a much bigger space about it, and that will help you want to prepare.
Right. So I do have a question, because you're one of the earlier kind of cloud adopters. One thing that we hear at TechSoup all the time, and when I started out with customer service, I'd be talking to people on the phones, and was that how can you help people get over their fear of the cloud? And you did talk about there's something if it's physically there, you can see it. But what can people do, and where can they find information so then they can make the good decisions? Because ultimately, we're finding with our donor partners, more and more of them are moving to the cloud. So, someday you won't even have an option of let's download this on your computer. It's all going to be cloud subscription based. So, what's your advice for people who are scared or just unsure about how to make that move?
I think I would. Most of these platforms today have demos on their website. You can take a demo and see kind of how it's going to work. I admit, being early, at the time I got on the cloud, it was with Carbonite, because Carbonite was kind of the new thing. Mm-hmm. What I loved about that and I guess, I kind of assumed every company would do it, but they don't. And that is, I got a plan where as I was typing my documents, my research, doing my charts, etc., they were uploading it as a constant stream up through the cloud. So, for instance, when the BSA situation happened and we lost they seem to have lost all a year's worth of intense work. So, basically, I was able to download that right from the cloud. In fact, I could download it on my smartphone, and so I love the idea of it constantly feeding up into the cloud all the time. And sometimes laptops break, and I had that happen once, and I basically had to have a computer specialist. He took out the hard drive, which I keep all those now in my file. They're just these little things, of course. And basically got a new laptop, got into my Carbonite account, and overnight I just plugged in. It took a couple hours, and it replaced every single one of those files in the cloud while I was sleeping. I was like so happy, I'm like out on the street, Carbonite. It's great, I love it. And but now I'm less. That was a lot of a really intense work in Corpus Christi, in particular, in that whole region. So I have Dropbox, as I mentioned, because I worked for a startup here for a year to help them ramp up for major gifts. And so I got used to cloud collaboration. So we would share files, I would pull them down, edit the grant, go back, or create the grant from scratch, send it over. So I would say there's, look at the demos. If you need somebody to kind of explain it to you, I'm thinking they probably provide that information. Or there are things like even the Department of Defense has articles online about why they're in the cloud and what's going on. So that might be a way to go about it. But I tend to look online and I look at those demos and I'm like, let's see, that's good. And the other good thing about technology with the really good companies, Box or Dropbox or Carbonite, they evolve over time. Like I get more capabilities as they get more sophisticated, and a lot of times there's even more security up there. But I don't know I just knew when I lost those files in 2003, really a long time ago now, that I just was never going to have that happen again. That was it. Never. Whatever it took. And I just got online, I started researching it, and I thought, well, here's this Carbonite, let's give that a shot. And it saved me several times, really. It really was very helpful there. But I know I just asked questions, I got online, and I just searched the website like really thoroughly. I guess I am more tech inclined. My father is a retired engineer. And so we had, growing up, my dad worked with NASA on the first manned moon mission back in '67. So I was just in junior high. And that was outside of Houston for you Houstonians at NASA. The Fort NASA area was part of Greater Houston, as they call it now. We were out there in the boonies. And so we had, every time there'd be a new calculator or a new Mac. Mac was all getting new and coming up. And all these early tech tools, my dad would go out and buy it. And we learned, we got on there. My father could make televisions from scratch. So, I definitely have that gene. So that's a long time ago through the city. But I would just say that, check out the demos. If you need a human to talk to you, my guess is they're going to. And check for YouTube channels, for how does it work. And the Department of Defense, how does it work? Like, how are they keeping our nation safe by putting their operations in the cloud? Really, that's my best example. If they can do it, I can.
I know, and I remember kind of early on when you brought that up, as the Department of Defense does it, so can nonprofits. It's like, yes, we can.
We can do it.
Right,
I think so.
right. It just takes, I think it just takes, it takes someone to point that out. So I have another question, which this is something that had come up in one of the forums. With all of these new technologies and, social media, and how do you keep control of passwords?
Oh, I actually was on the online platform talking to somebody in Houston at the Boys and Girls Clubs, I think. And I mentioned that because passwords, that's like a huge issue. And I've worked with a lot of groups and they have them all over the place, or they forget to update them, and so they get the list when they've lost the list, and they get the last list and it's not up to date. I mean, it can be such a nightmare. I don't know how long ago, 5-6 years ago, went with Dashlane. And I noticed them because a lot of big Fortune 500 companies were using it. I thought, well, what's that? And they actually have a free plan to start. So I put them all my passwords are in Dashlane, and that's where I get them to this day. I upgraded out of the free plan, just a little more complicated. And I have personal information. I have some credit card information. I have other stuff, but I have about 166. Actually, I spent the summer cleaning out. I had over 200, and there were some that were just not necessary. But basically, from any device, anywhere, I can get on, log into my Dashlane app on my phone, for instance, and find those passwords. And if you want Dashlane to autofill the passwords, it'll go, okay, you must, when you create a little password profile for TechSoup, it opens up and it requires that you share a link to that login page. And so it can open that for you, and it'll do it. And here's the thing that I absolutely love is they'll alert me when there's been a password breach at Facebook or Tumblr. Like I have a Tumblr, and recently they had a breach, and it says we recommend. It'll just pop up on my computer, and it'll say there's been a password breach at Tumblr, and it's not in the news yet. In fact, sometimes it's not there till the next day, but I got it first, and I immediately go over and I change my password wherever that is. I think Facebook, Tumblr are the two that I remember the most. But I really like Dashlane, and I can send anyone a link. I actually did, and they signed up. Thank you to the fellow in Houston that I spoke to yesterday. I have, like refer a friend or whatever. But I do that, and then when I do grants, everything is log in, write the grant, submit, all these places. It's getting so online. So that means you accumulate a lot of passwords. And so what I do with my nonprofits is I actually create a little file, like, it would be TechSoup, and then that would be the title, and then I'd put a little slash, and it would be Fidelity Investments or something. And so I'd have about 10, 15 of those. And so when I'm done with my work with a nonprofit, I take all those off and I make a list of really nice list, PDF it. I don't actually just, I just make a PDF to lock it. And I give that to them and I say, I'm now going to remove all your passwords from my Dashlane account. And if you have any questions, let me know. So they get that, and then I'm done. I take it off. It's gone. But that also means while I'm working with nonprofits, then their information, their logins are all safe. It's like pretty hard to beat Dashlane. But I know there are others, and also I see Google's getting into more password saving, password protection. So it's not just Dashlane, it's just that I'm so, enamored of it. That's my current method. But so if anybody wants a link, I'm happy to give it. And we actually got somebody signed up yesterday.
Just realized I was muted. Thank you so much. And I saw that back and forth in the forum. That was fabulous. I have a question specifically because you work with major gifts, with raising funds. After the disaster, I imagine that's what a lot of nonprofits need to turn to in order to rebuild themselves. Can you talk a little bit? What's the best strategy? How do you go about, once you've kind of determined, you've assessed, okay, we have a building, we have these files, but we need to be able to do this, and we need funds to do this. How do you plan for that, or how do you do that?
I was excited toward the end of the online course that you all are involved in taking. I saw some of my information posted on there, but basically, I think it's important to, obviously you're scrambling around just trying to get life in order again, but you don't want to scramble around with your nonprofit and its credibility. What a lot of people do right away, it's like, oh, let's go do now. I don't want to be mean, but say, let's do a GoFundMe. Let's go right now. Well, I guess I would say that if you think it through in advance, like make sure you have your IRS nonprofit letter. I've worked with several groups. This is a recurring issue where they actually changed their name over time, but they still have the old IRS letter. And you submit a major grant to a foundation, and they go, wait, are you the same group as this group? I mean, just go ahead and make sure every year, look at it and go, oh, it's kind of different now. Get a refreshed version. And I actually have some of them, I suggest that they post that as a downloadable PDF from their websites, but get that, make sure that your name on that IRS letter, your original letter, don't forget, don't just like give it out and then people get confused. So have that be right. In Texas, it's not all over Texas, but I know in South Texas, down there, that a lot of donors like to see the Texas Secretary of State Certificate of Fact, which has a slightly different name. But basically, if you get on the Texas Secretary of State website, you can find that information. It's in the curriculum. And it basically just it acknowledges that you can do business in Texas, that you are doing business in Texas, that you pay taxes, you're registered. And with, again, the correct name. Sometimes you have to get a refresher, So I've gone through that a few times. Just get that over with. Like maybe that's January of the year. Just, okay, look at everything. Okay, done. Then get your GuideStar profile, whether you like it or not. And a lot of people don't, actually. They're on GuideStar. People are like, ooh. They automatically upload all the tax returns from all the nonprofits in the United States every year. And you're on there. You have a profile, whether you like it or not. So might as well get hold of that profile and fill it out. I always say you can go to platinum, and some groups I've worked with are not platinum, which is the top level, but gold is really good. Gold's very solid, and it's not very hard. It takes a little time to fill it out, but it's for free. There's no charge involved. It just take the time to fill it out and demonstrate your transparency on there. And you can upload links to videos on YouTube, and you can upload brochures, a few photos. You can really make it pretty colorful. But I go in there routinely. I did a profile for a group down in Corpus a couple of years ago, and I just updated it for them. They wanted me to help them with the grant. So I said, I'm not doing this without having your profile updated. So they go on there and go, yay, I got a 2017 gold seal. What about 2019? And so anyway, once you update your profile, and usually about March is when GuideStar refreshes that, and it takes a couple months before it has a new seal for the year. So about March of each year, get on there, refresher, even just like a sentence refresher will get you the new seal, basically, if you've already gotten it the year before. And I tell people just put it on the website, and then make it so when you click on it, it goes right to your profile. And so if you have all that solidly in place, you're already saying, we're solid. We are on top of it. And so when you have to jump into, I need money, we are desperate to get, our building fixed. And this is what it's going to cost. Then you don't have to waste any time going back, like, what was our name back then? And then we changed it. Or, let me get the IRS, and, you know, don't just cut to the chase and get right there. And I also think if you're just doing online fundraisers, apps, using apps, PayPal, using QGive, or any processor that you've got, online gift processing service, if that's what you have. They most all of them have apps for your phone. And you can set up pages, on your website, if website is secure and you're, operating just fine on there and you're communicating. I always say it's kind of good to go right to the website and say, donate now to the recovery fund. Like on the page, like make it clear. Because I'll tell you what, I was responding to a plea for help for some emergency, and they shared the link on social. So I got on the link, but it wasn't until the very end of the page that I could see that it was that right group. Like, who am I sending money to? I couldn't really tell. So you have to realize the psychology of people wanting to give. It's is it real? Is it credible? And go to a secure. Go to your web page. If you can update and put that right there, like, this is us. This link is us. It's okay. You kind of need that extra support there. But if you're looking for big gifts above and beyond the broad-based response and support that you would get through an online quick giving campaign, you can activate a donate button. By the way, just stepping aside before I leave that, you can activate. GuideStar has a donate button, and it will ask you, do you want us to activate that donate button? So say yes. Why not? If you want to have funds not just mailed to you as a check, you can sign up. I think it's WePay, and of course there are transaction fees involved. So that's the case with any online processor. But you can have that as an option. But if you're looking for bigger grants, you might start looking to the Rebuild. I guess it's One Star Foundation now has the information and will coordinate with Rebuild Texas as they need to activate disaster fundraising for major gifts. Community funds, the Coastal Bend Community Foundation or Houston area Community Foundation, they are all on top of it. They are generally really watching for that. Center for Disaster Philanthropy, which is sponsor of our curriculum, they're going to be fundraising and trying to get money to you. So I would say you're going to get money back more quickly if you're going to look really credible online. You have your GuideStar profile, your IRS letter is actually you, not like 20 years ago. If you get the Texas Secretary of State certificate of fact, that will be an extra feather in your cap. So I would say get all that done before, just proactively, and really that'll hold without a disaster. That's just good advice for existing, but it's really good advice because you want to focus on the fundraising and getting those funds to you, hook it right to your bank account. It's a lot of these gift processors today, if you don't have an online gift processing service in place, they're pretty quick about setting it up if they know it's an emergency. I've seen that happen. Like QGive had kind of a quick emergency online response for the Amazon fire relief problems down in Latin America. And it was over $1 million they raised online. So it's very possible you might, in bunch of smaller gifts, get them that way. So I guess I would contact the actual staff in those cases. But on those platforms, you can create infinite numbers of donation pages. So why not just create a donation page in case of emergency? So then the emergency happens, like, oh my gosh, we have to do it. Get that money right to your bank account. Don't let it have to go through the mail and wander around the United States, Zoom, electronic transfer. That's it, in the cloud, secure. And that's what we did in Port Aransas. We started with QGive, and hooked it right to their bank. So it never had to go through the post office. And the post office, I could tell you, it was months after Hurricane Harvey that I was working on setting up, in this case, QGIF worked for them. And they were still having issues at the post office from Hurricane Harvey. I mean, wait, it's like 6 months later. So if you can have electronic deposit and do your payroll that same way, just like go ahead, set it up. And once you do it and take the time to learn it, it'll work for you.
What's so interesting is the theme that just keeps on coming up, Carolyn, is that all of these things are doable. They don't take a lot of time, but you just have to make the time, or make the plan to do it. With so many, and I know just from you're talking about GuideStar, part of when I was in customer service, and we would get new nonprofits joining TechSoup, and we'd go into GuideStar, and then we go to the website, and we'd be like, oh, the name's different, or oh, that doesn't match up anymore, and it causes headaches for anything. And so that's really good advice in terms of if you're going to be looking to get some funds after an emergency, that's not when you want to be kind of going around and updating a website or updating GuideStar. You want to do it beforehand.
Yeah, and it helps in every aspect of your operations if you'll go ahead and do it, regardless of disaster or not. It's worth doing it up front. And then, but you'd be surprised. That's the other thing. You'd be surprised at how things change after a year. And you go, oh my gosh, that person's not on the board, or like they're really not on the board, they're terrible, and I really want their name off, and whatever. Your budget's totally changed, and you can update that pretty easily on GuideStar, and it's really well worth it. I actually make sure before I write grant proposals today, I go to GuideStar to see what they say their budget is and make sure that my proposal reflects that appropriately, and if it doesn't, I say, look, I think you need to update your budget on GuideStar. Sometimes I help them do that. So.
Yeah, because it just seems like it's like with anything, it's like it's these best practices. They don't take a lot of time, but they're so important for your daily business. But then especially in terms of when disaster strikes, and I don't see any more questions. But I just want to, before I let you go, Carolyn, I want to thank you so much for all the insight and the great suggestions that you bring. I love the fact that you have such experience with nonprofits and know exactly what they're experiencing and what their needs are, and that you keep on coming back to the fact that it's about the mission and it's about what the nonprofit does. And so and it's a response, it's a gift and a responsibility, right? It's a gift to be kind of the caretaker of it, but it's also the responsibility. And disaster plans aren't exactly at the top of the list. So even here at TechSoup, we have a new woman working for us, and she's been looking, and she's like, we don't have this, and so she's building out a disaster preparedness plan, and it's a good thing. And she keeps on reminding us that we're in San Francisco, earthquakes happen. If something happens, we need to take care of each other. But then ultimately, we need to take care of the nonprofits who are waiting for some software to get to them or some license to get to them, that we can't just close up door.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's, always, this is the thing, you get in a rush to, emergencies happen, whatever kind of emergency it is. And you get in a rush, and like I say, it's like, we're just going to go to CrowdRise or GoFundMe, or we're just do that because everybody does that. It's like, look at the processing fees. Kind of think that through. What are we going to do if we want to fundraise after emergency? And that's part of the plan. It's like, make a choice. You could route everybody right to GuideStar. How great would that be? It's like, right here, gold profile, platinum profile. Here we are. And you could just skip it if you needed to get off your gift processor. But I would say work with the one that you have, whatever gift. Blackbaud has their gift processing, QGIF, PayPal is better than ever. all these services, work with them and view them as part of your plan, and use them and say, hey, activate. I need that particular donate page because we have an emergency.
Right. And that's the hope with this course, and, creating a disaster plan that yourself and our other experts kind of, did this like brain dump of all this experience and information and resources for nonprofits to have a plan. So then, they can check that off their list. Right. And it's, it's once you have it done, then it's just a matter of upkeep. Like you're talking about the guide star. Every year, it should be just part of your, part of how we run our organization. Every year, go back in. Does this disaster plan still hold up? What's changed? What's new? Who isn't here anymore? Who else do we need to add to it? But, you're right. You do the hard work one time, hopefully with like a good team of people to support you. And then it's the upkeep.
And it's just update.
Yeah.
No big deal. Yeah. But you'll be happy you did.
Right. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thrilled to have you. And I'd also like to do a shout out to our tech change. We have yay, who are running the event in the back. And if those of you who came late to this, remember every video we have is going to be is recorded, so you'll be able to watch and pause and take down notes of like, what did you say about that? Let's go back. And then next week we have our third with Drew. So thank you so much for everybody joining us. Thank you, Carolyn. An absolute pleasure as always. And we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.